26. Purusha svabhava vihitan. Purusha svabhava vihitan. Yatavarnyam yatashramam. Yatavarnam yatashramam. Vairagya rajapadibhyam. Vairagya ragopadibhyam. Amnato bhaya lakshanam. Amnato bhaya lakshanam. Purusham svabhava vihitam. Yata varnam yatashramam. Vairagya rajapadibhyam. Amnato bhaya lakshanam. Please chant. Purusha svabhava vihitam. Anmato bhaya lakshanam. Yatavarnam yatashamam. Ladies, sorry. Human being, svabhava, by his own acquired qualities, vihitan, prescribed, yata, according to, varnyam, classifications of caste, yata, according to, ashramam, orders of life, vairagya, detachment, raga, attachment, upadibhyam, out of such designation, amnata, systematically, upaya, both, lakshanam, symptoms. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. At Maharaj Yudhishthir's inquiry, Bhismadev first defined all the classifications of castes and orders of life in terms of the individual's qualification. Then he systematically, in twofold divisions, described counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. So this is a very long purport. It's a 3-page purport. So I'm going to read it little by little, and hopefully you'll, and I'm thinking in honor of Karnapur's birthday, we'll do it a little bit like that Sunday lecture that he gives of Srila Prabhupada. We'll speak a little bit, and then we'll read from the purport, And then we'll ask you what you remember and what your reflections are on it. It's a quite long purport, and it's hard to keep everybody, you know.
Are you going to start from the Sutra class? Because yesterday we did up the Sutra. You read the first four paragraphs.
Really? He never told me that. Thank you for that.
That's how it's written there.
Oh, so good I know.
It's up to you. You can do it.
Okay, that's what I get for not reading the thing. So the Sutra class doesn't. Oh, how that's quite appropriate for me. Thank you.
You can still do the way you're.
No, that's all right. All right. Where was I yesterday? Okay, I'm going to read the translation again. At Maharaj Yudhishthira's inquiry, Bhishmadev first defined all the classifications of caste and order of life in terms of the individual qualifications. Then he systematically, in twofold divisions, described counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. So in the verse, Om Aginatimidandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chaksu Urmilitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master very kindly forced to open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I'm totally indebted to him and beg for service, life after life. So, just to start, I'm going to start the first part of the purport because that's very potent there. How Srila Prabhupada says, the very first sentence, very first couple of sentences. The conception of the four castes and four orders of life, as planned by the Lord himself, is to accelerate the transcendental qualities of the individual person so that he may gradually realize his spiritual identity and thus act accordingly to get free from material bondage or conditional life. So that's a very, very important understanding of this Varnashram Dharma system that Srila Prabhupada is explaining, that Krishna explains. And you can see just from that very introductory sentence to this very long purport that this Varnashram Dharma system, it's not based on envy. It's not based on envy of individuals. It's actually based on a desire. The whole purpose of the Lord creating this system is to create a systematic way that people from whatever status of life they're in, and I don't mean social status, I mean conscious, the status of their consciousness. Wherever they're at, they can engage somehow or other and make progress in spiritual life. The point is that the tendency in the material world is to think, I, me, and mine, I'm here to enjoy, let me squeeze out the most enjoyment I can in life, eat, drink, mate, eat, drink, whatever that is, and be merry, because there's no tomorrow, or I'm not responsible for my acts. That, especially in this day and age of Kali, is so all-pervading. But the Varnashram Dharma system is set up to facilitate the organized, even though we don't like that word, that organized system so people can make advancement. Because why? Because it's guided by the understanding that there's a body and there's a soul. The body's temporary, ABCs of spiritual life, the body's temporary, it has its needs to be maintained, etc., etc. But beyond the temporary struggle for material existence is the duty that we have to awaken ourselves to our spiritual identity and get back in our real position. We're in a foreign atmosphere. And because we're in a foreign atmosphere, we have to struggle. But situated in our natural atmosphere of servants of the Lord, naturally situated in that atmosphere, there's no struggle but ever-ending bliss. So, starting from the paragraph that says, we'll go down now to where I'm supposed to be. Krishna. The Sudra class is less intelligent and should have no independence. They are meant for rendering sincere service to the three higher sections of society. The Sudra class can attain all comforts of life simply by rendering service to the higher classes. It is especially enjoined that a Shudra should never bank money. As soon as the Sudras accumulate wealth, it will be misused for sinful activities in wine, women, and gambling. And this is in italics, yeah. Wine, women, and gambling indicate that the population is degraded to less than Sudra quality. So, not that it's a shock to any of us, but we can see that from this explanation that the population is less than Sudra. The whole population, it's being governed and whatever the word is, organized by people who have such a low consciousness of life that anybody under their care is never going to, is never going to awaken their spiritual self. So who can remember from yesterday's verse? Now this is even going to be harder because now you're not having a refresher course. But who can remember the 9 instructions that Bhishmadev gave for all human beings, or some of the 9? Some of the 9. Trivikram Prabhu.
Suppression of anger is the foremost duty of all the varnas and ashrams.
Good. But on those 9 qualities, he had some different instructions. Anyone remember one of them to start us off?
No lying.
No lying. Yeah.
Be simple.
Hold on now. We're not having you be our Shrutidar just yet, okay? Although we have you in reserve when we can't get all 9 of them, okay? So being, not to lie, to be simple, controlling anger, not becoming anger. Okay, Mr. Shrutidar. Prabhu. Oh, Prabhu?
Controlling the senses, not being prone to lust.
Yeah. How about to be pure in mind and hygienic in body, not to be.
Greedy.
I'm going to read him, okay? Okay.
Is that what it means?
That meant not to be inimical. That was my translation of not to be inimical. My miming, not to be inimical towards anybody.
To be non-violent.
So here it is. I'm reading. This is from the second paragraph. Bhishmadev advised for all human beings 9 qualifications. So, okay, I'll read the qualifications. Not to become angry, not to lie, to equally distribute wealth, to forgive, to beget children only by one's legitimate wife, to be pure in mind and hygienic in body, not to be inimical towards anyone, to be simple, and to support servants or subordinates. So these 9 principles are the basis of human life, and then there's the qualifications of the ashrams and the varnas. So we can see how lacking we are even in these 9 basic qualities of a human being, that it's just so completely covered. All of those qualities practically are so completely covered. And if anybody exhibits a few of the qualities, or 1 or 2 of the qualities, even to a minute degree, even if somebody says, oh, you gave me the wrong change, here's $5 back, that's such an amazing thing. That's the tendency is, for a cheater like myself, they give you the wrong change and you think, oh, that's Walmart, they don't need the money, I'll keep it, or whatever. You know what I mean? The cheating propensity is so all-pervasive. What to speak of how, in other words. So those are the basic qualities for a basic human being, and then in the different varnas and ashrams, there's cultivation of different higher qualities, higher than that. But even that is so elevated for a human being in Kali Yuga. And then we can see how, not that this hasn't been said many a time, how fortunate we are to somehow or other come in contact with transcendental knowledge that brings us right, it's even above Varna and Ashram. We haven't even got to the stage of Varna and Ashram, and yet the transcendental knowledge brings us way beyond that. So, in this description so far that we've read of the Sudra class, still the quality is there. We can hear the description. It's not a discriminatory description. Oh, they're no good. Oh, they're less intelligent. Oh, they're just a pain in the society. Oh, they're this. Oh, they're that. Oh, they're dirty. Oh, they should be neglected and disrespected. No, there is giving a description by 4:13, the Bhagavad Gita verse that was quoted in the beginning of the chapter, in the beginning of this purport. Chaturvanya mayashustam guna karma vibhagasha. How is it that one is situated in different positions in the varnashram system? Is guna by qualities and karma by activities. And by those qualities one acts, and by those actions one gets reactions, and such the interaction is there so strong that if one exhibits a certain type of quality, then they act in a certain type of way. They act in a certain type of way, they get a certain type of reaction, and therefore, under normal action and reaction circumstances, people get stuck in the modes of nature, in those sometimes here described lower modes of nature, and therefore act in certain ways. But it's described that the Vedas are more merciful than millions of mothers, because a mother naturally has her affection and her good wishes for her children, and she's kindly instructing them and raising them, just like Mother Yasoda, right? Mother Yasoda, what was her concern? That Krishna grows up to be a nice human being, and he doesn't grow up to be a rascal thief or this or that. So she's always trying to instruct him in so many ways. That's a natural position. But the Vedas are more merciful than millions of mothers, because a mother concerned for her own children, she's giving her instruction and her affection and her guidance to a certain 1 to 3 or 5 kids. But the Vedas are giving instructions for millions of people in all different statuses and consciousness of life. So why? So that they can be graduated from where they're at, they can be elevated. So, and that's the point. They make progress in spiritual path, in the path. The problem is that by this gradual process, it is actually that very gradual. By the gradual elevation from the varna, from one ashram to the next, from one varna to the next, gradually going upward, it can take. Who can calculate how long it can take? And millions of lives it can take. And we've already done that for so long. We think, oh, Krishna, So, but the process of bhakti yoga is so transcendental that no matter where you are in the statuses of human being and the consciousness of a human being, that by taking to that process, it's what's described as the elevator. The transcendental position. One can be brought to the transcendental position in spite of any impediment right there. So, continuing on in this paragraph, the higher caste should always look after the maintenance of the Sudras, and they should provide them with old and used garments. Now that kind of sounds like when somebody's provided with an old garment. If you get one from me, you get a really holy old garment. Not holy in the sense of sacred, but holy in the sense with old used things. But you can remember how many descriptions can you remember of great sacrifices that took place in the Vedic culture, where the kings took their bath and they gave away their old, quote unquote, their old garments, or like that. So it wasn't that they were disregarded. They weren't disregarded, and the basic necessities of life were relatively easily attainable. So the struggle for material existence of just maintaining the body wasn't so severe no matter where you were and in what status of life you were in. That struggle for material existence, which we can see in this day and age, just to maintain the body and the family, you know, is a huge endeavor. It requires oftentimes both partners in the marriage to be working, and sometimes even then it's not a pleasant situation monetarily. The struggle is so great. There's so much pressure just to keep a roof over your head, that how can someone be peaceful in that kind of situation, to think, oh yeah, I need to take out half of my day to meditate on the Lord and to chant His holy name and to do this and to do that. It's such a pressure. And we can see the further that we get away from the Vedic system of organizing society, the more the struggle for existence increases. And we can see, even practically speaking, now the how great it is. There's tremendous fires in one part of the country. There's floods in another part of the country, and not only that, but there's repeated floods. There's repeated storms. They just recuperate from one storm, and there's another one, and now there's another one on the way to the same general area inside the Gulf there. So life is such a struggle, and it's not meant to be like that. It's like that because why? Because we've turned our back from the Supreme Lord, and with the back turned to the Supreme Lord, we're thinking, oh, I can figure it out on my own. But we're reaping the results, and it's only going to get the intensity of Kali Yuga is only going to get stronger and stronger as the age progresses. But here, when I was reading this purport, it was like being bathed in crystal clear waters. You know, consciousness. You have your consciousness bathed in what the society could possibly look like, or actually should look like, when the whole system is geared for, on the basis of this Varna and Ashram system, and geared towards pleasing the Lord. It's a whole different utopia. It's actually a utopia type of situation, because everyone can participate and progress at the same time. So Prabhupada continues to say, okay, I'm going to read one sentence back. The higher caste should always look after the maintenance of the Sudras, and they should provide them with old and used garments. A Shudra should not leave his master when the master is old and invalid. And the master should keep the servant satisfied in all respect. So there's no envy there. There's no envy. There's the servant has been maintained with dignity and affection by his superior, and that person keeps on serving even when there's difficulty with in that superior's life. And he should keep, and Prabhupada says, the master should keep the servant satisfied in all respects. And actually, even though it's describing this as a quality of a Sudra, to be satisfied, actually that quality of being satisfied in any circumstances, that's a very elevated quality. That's actually a quality, one of the qualities of the Brahmins, is that they're satisfied. Well, that they're satisfied with whatever comes by the Lord's arrangement. Anyway, Prabhupada says, a Sudra must first of all be satisfied with sumptuous food and clothing before any sacrifice is performed. In this age, so many functions are held by spending millions. But the poor laborer is not sumptuously fed or given charity, clothing, etc. The laborers are thus dissatisfied, and thus they make agitation. So we're so much familiar with great, Prabhupada's going to talk about it a little bit more in this, and talked about it, how that the government should maintain the people by taking care of their needs and giving charity. That was mentioned, I guess, yesterday. That they should give in charity to those people who have supported them, whatever. But that's exactly, it never happens in this day and age, that the people who, they're just taking the money for their political campaigns, and they're never giving back to the people. Continuing on, the varnas are, so to speak, classifications of different occupations, as ashram dharma is a gradual process on the path of self-realization. Both are interrelated and one is dependent on the other. The main purpose of ashram dharma is to awaken knowledge and detachment. Again, the main purpose of ashram dharma is to awaken knowledge and detachment. The brahmachari ashram is the training ground for the prospective candidates. In this ashram, it is instructed that this material world is not actually home to the living being. The conditioned souls under material bondage are prisoners of matter, and therefore self-realization is the ultimate aim of life. The whole system of ashram dharma is a means to detachment. One who fails to assimilate the spirit of detachment is allowed to enter family life with the same spirit of detachment. Therefore, one who attains detachment may at once adopt the fourth order, namely renounced, and thus live on charity only, not to accumulate wealth, but just to keep the body and soul together for ultimate realization. Household life is for one who is attached, and the vanaprastha and sannyas orders of life are for those who are detached from material life. The brahmachari ashram is especially meant for training both the attached and the detached. So, how about some reflections so far on that, particularly on that last paragraph, if you tuned in, if you were able to tune in. Some reflections on that last paragraph.
If we follow varnashram system, that
For such an intelligent Shrutidar person, you have the tendency not to remember the microphone. But for personalities like myself and many others who depend on listening to class at home, it's very important.
Thank you.
My dear son, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mother.
And it only helps if you put it near your mouth.
What I understood that if we follow the Varnashram system, then the system itself give a comfort zone to materially our anitya dharma or sense gratification is disciplined, and we can perform our eternal dharma, Krishna consciousness, where the spiritual attachment will develop, and proportion to that material detachment that
Yes.
is not necessary will also develop.
Yes, yes. So who can correlate a verse from Bhagavad Gita that supports what Pran Govinda Prabhu just said? Why not? Because everything he says is based on Shastra, right? Param dristva nivartate. Because how do you become detached? Do we work on being detached? That's not the general process of devotional service. The general process of devotional service is work on becoming attached. Work on becoming attracted, develop a higher taste by devotional service through chanting the holy name, through serving the spiritual master and the devotees by taking prasadam. Develop a higher taste, and then by that cultivation of higher taste, the lesser things follow. They become less significant in our lives. It's a very blissful process. It's not that we're hacking away. I mean, that we're always encouraged to become detached. Be detached, Prabhu. You know, don't be attached to the results. Whatever. We're encouraged like that, and that's good. But how to do it is not through the negative. How to do it is through the positive. And that's the beauty of this Krishna consciousness movement and the way that Srila Prabhupada presented it to us. Because even you take the situation of Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, how he decides that he doesn't want to fight in the battle of Kurukshetra because his superiors are there, they're worthy of his worship, he should be throwing flowers at them, not arrows. So he's declining. He's declining to fight. He doesn't want to participate because he doesn't want the sinful reactions, because of the fear of degradation, so many things. But Krishna says to him, but you're not at the particular point to be qualified to be renounced and stay there. So don't become mityachara, don't become a pretender, falsely saying I'm renounced, renouncing, but meditating in the mind on the objects of sense gratification. Mityachara, that's a pretender, that's a cheater. And even if you do renounce under those pretexts, you won't be able to maintain it. Whereas if you develop a higher taste, that you'll be able to maintain, because the pleasure that you get from those activities or the service that you render will keep you steadfast on the path, and any amount of agitation or temptation won't deviate you, because you'll be fixed in that higher taste. It's such an instead of I have to renounce, I'm going to renounce, I'm not going to look at that, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this, what are you doing? You're thinking of all the things that you're supposed to be not thinking of. But by thinking of the Lord and His service and whatever, your service, then that higher taste automatically develops. It does automatically develop, especially if you cultivate it. And therefore, the other things that we would have considered temptations or whatever become so less potent in their disturbance, so less disturbing in the outcome of our life, that you think, no, this is my goal. So this is again the beauty of the system that's established by Varna and Ashram, so that one can stay fixed in there's a higher goal here. The goal of life isn't to be comfortable here. That's an impossible goal. We can see it when we talk about it. We can say, oh yeah, that's so obvious. But then again, we're always seeing that that's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to make ourselves comfortable here. But fortunately, because of the hearing process, engaging the mind and the senses and the ears and everything, and hearing about the glories of the Lord, and hearing and the beauty of the system that Srila Prabhupada set up for us, that we're hearing every day reminder as to what our real goals of life should be, could be, will be, are going to be, are, and gradually that it evolves a whole different way of looking at things. So this process of attachment and detachment, it's stressed throughout the scriptures in so many different ways. How what was Dhritarashtra's problem? Dhritarashtra, the blind king, because he was attached to having his sons become the king, he suffered so much. He suffered so much. And all it was a question of giving up that attachment and seeing the sons of Pandu and his sons as the same family members, and seeing how they could have possibly worked together, then the whole situation would have changed. But because of that attachment and not being able to give up that attachment, then he had to suffer tremendously. But fortunately, Vidura came and scooped him up at the last 5 days of his life. But still, it's just that mental concept that we're working on. Any other? Sesha Prabhu?
Thank you. Nanda, you made the point a couple of times that the Varnashram system works, particularly in regard to Sudras, because there is no envy. That's a pretty high bar to come to or establish in Kali Yuga. I mean, given other difficulties in instituting a system like Varnashram Dharma, to rid oneself of envy so that the Sudra class are treated as described there seems practically impossible.
Thanks for that comment. And it's true. It seems impossible. And it's totally impossible by our own endeavor. Totally. But somehow or other, even if we just look back and see what Srila Prabhupada did and brought us, that also was, impossible. It was an impossible task. And I was listening, recently I've been listening to the Prabhupada Memories, and many devotees make the point, they were remembering how Srila Prabhupada, he would give all the credit, whenever he would get the credit, oh, you've done something wonderful, Swami. He would always give credit to his spiritual master. In fact, I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was, but somebody came into Prabhupada's room at one time and bowed down and paid his obeisance and said, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Was it Ranjit?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Okay, yeah. And Srila Prabhupada said, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, that was right, when he went in to get his Brahmanical initiation. Yeah. And that's kind of shook him a little bit. It startled him. But then he realized, oh yeah, he's giving his praise, he's giving his glorification to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj. So there's the link, or there's the key to what makes impossible tasks possible. Just like, is by linking up with the parampara, linking up with the force that's greater than ourselves. I mean, I was hoping no one would ask me, how are you going to establish Varnashram system in society today? Because, it's not my particular thing. But the idea again is that by the devotees, such as yourself, taking on such responsible positions and pushing on this Krishna consciousness movement, the idea is that by that sincere effort, no matter how imperfect it is, but there's sincerity there, then Krishna can do so many things. And he'll do it beyond our ability to do it. So it is a high bar. It is a high bar, but it's not within ourselves to do it by our own endeavor. Yeah, Prabhu had a question or comment. No, he didn't.
And then I'll give you.
Okay. You were talking about some comment about the last paragraph that you had read. And I was thinking that how, just like you were mentioning, that the varna is, it's just it's on an automatic, it's not it's an automatic thing, it's a natural thing. I was thinking the same thing, the ashram is like that how it's a natural thing that after you finish household life, kids are grown, that naturally you come to the vanaprastha. Naturally there is detachment from the process of hearing, because people in general, they go through household life and then they think about other nonsense stuff that they want to do in life, So I was actually appreciating your expression about how it's natural, and same thing in the ashram also, it's a natural progression. Nothing is artificial about it.
Yeah.
And so, just wanted to express that.
Thanks. Abhigya Prabhu?
What I have learned is brahmacharya or brahmachari ashram is the most important phase to build that class in the society. Because the first 20-25 years are the most critical.
Yeah.
And parents and guru plays the most important role. Parents take care of their kids in a way that they follow that whole philosophy and culture, and then they send it in the shelter of guru, and then they follow the principle and learn everything from the guru. Then most likely, and that's again the probability, but there's more probability a person will follow the rest of the class properly in his life. Coming later age in the life, it's very difficult for anybody to learn everything and retain, because past deeds always empower somebody. If somebody has done something bad in his previous years, it's very difficult to get out. Yes.
The impressions on the mind.
Yes.
Always come back to haunt you.
Yeah, especially in those teen ages, it's very important. So brahmachari ashram, I think, is very critical for anybody. Thank you.
Yes. It is a very critical stage, and in spite of that, not to counteract anything that you said, but in spite of that, we can see the potency of how so many of us didn't have that, and yet by coming in contact with Srila Prabhupada and the movement, somehow or other, we're hobbling along. But obviously, what you're saying is foundational. Trivikram Prabhu.
Yeah, so Varnashram in this age becomes very, very difficult to establish because everyone wants to be equal. I mean, if you look, there's fight for equality in every aspect of society.
Yes.
And that is so strong now that to establish or re-establish Varnashram becomes so difficult. Because, you look at it, everyone the fight for equality, it's so prevalent and so dominant that
Correct.
it becomes impossible to regrade society back to, that thing. So, but anyhow, Srila Prabhupada desired it, and we hopefully we can strive to establish some aspect of it.
Yes, thanks. Nice comment. And it's totally true that it's so difficult to reestablish. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada didn't put his emphasis in the beginning on reestablishing Varnashram. He put his emphasis on chanting hard, having people develop a higher taste. And therefore, when they, just like, as you rightly said, everyone is so fighting for equality, and it's because. So what's the solution? The solution isn't try to make everyone equal. The solution is try to educate people as to who they really are. The soul. The body's never going to be, as you're well aware, the body's never going to be equal. That's why Prabhupada said, well, can you have a baby? No, you can't have a baby. But, so the bodies aren't equal. They have different functions. But when we understand, but you're a spirit soul and you're a spirit soul, then there's hope. But it is a mighty task for sure. Okay. Here's a quote. One who fails to assimilate the spirit of detachment is allowed to enter to family life with the same spirit of detachment. How is that possible? So that's quoting from the purport, and it's from Ragatnika. So how is it possible? That's referring to the brahmachari or the person who is not totally detached and who therefore enters household life. He's enters household life with the same spirit of detachment. Well, maybe he's not up onto the total level of detached, but he's been trained in his brahmachari years, or that there's a higher purpose in life than just sense gratification. So, okay, so Grihastha ashram is a concession for someone who can't go from brahmachari to sannyas. But at the same time, he's not going from, hopefully, from brahmachari to, gross sense enjoyer. You know what I mean? He's understanding that there's a higher purpose in life, and I have this responsibility now, and we're going to live and serve together, and ultimately we'll develop detachment by.
There's a whole bunch on the bottom.
Okay. Okay, so Jagori makes a comment. Most of Srila Prabhupada's disciples were in their 20s, meaning with a bad, I think it's referring to, with not brahmachari training, but are still here. So Girish, who's a daily contributor, what I learned about was on how to do and think of positive things to get rid of attachments which are getting our minds preoccupied. I learned how to do and think of positive things to get rid of the attachments which are still getting our minds preoccupied. Positive things, one would assume that he's referring to devotional activities in devotional service. And Samapriya says, how about setting up a Varna ashram in our ashram in our movement as a prototype? I think that's a great idea, Sama, and you and Dhruva can go right ahead and do that. and the point also, another point is that we're actually doing it. We're in the wash machine of the Varna, you know what I mean? We're seeing that there are intellectual devotees, and they, do their study of Shastra and so many things. Then there are, the more mixed modes of passion, and they're endeavoring in so many ways. And then there's someone in different, it's happening. We're it. Sometimes that's my answer when they say setting up Varnashram Dharma. That's what we're doing, gradually. And you can see it in our blossoming little community here in Alachua. You can see that, there's the schools are going on, that this is going on. People are trying to earn their living in a civilized way and associate with devotees, and gradually, we're in the wash machine of life. Hopefully to come out nice and clean in the end, lovers of Krishna.
He agrees, and she said
Thanks. Okay. Is that all from you guys? Because it's all from me. Okay, thank you very kindly for your kind attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.